Okay, looks like most people have their speakers joined. So welcome to this week's It's Worth a Shot. We are welcoming ombudsmen from 4 of our states. So we've got representatives from Alaska, Hawaii, Montana, and Wyoming. We're super excited to have them join us. Can we go to the next slide, Mary? As always, this presentation may contain information and or content supplied by third parties, which we do have third parties on today. So the information provided does not constitute endorsement or recommendation by Mountain Pacific, but we do highly recommend you work with your ombudsman. Next slide, please. So we just have some updates and reminders. This week is actually Hand Washing Awareness Week. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but we do have some hand hygiene microlearning tools. And then also we have created a staff training tracker that we will showcase at a later It's Worth a Shot, but it helps the facilities keep track of the training that their staff has completed throughout the year. We also have an influenza awareness information from CDC that would be something to go ahead and take a look at. Next slide, please. So as always, we always thank you guys for participating and joining in this webinar each week, and we will consistently keep it going each Wednesday. We will take a break at the end of the month to recognize Christmas and New Year, so there will be no presentation on the 27th of December, and we will resume again in 2024. Mary, we have a short poll that we'll take. If you can launch that, Okay, so if you guys could answer the poll real quickly, we'd really appreciate it. Has your facility reintroduced group activities for your residents? All right, looks like we've got a resounding yes. That's great. Okay, we can go ahead and end the poll, Mary. Looks like everybody has reintroduced them to who has taken the poll, so we appreciate that information. Next slide, Mary. Okay, so just it's the winter, so we're doing in the middle of our influenza uptake for the season. So as you can see, everything is increasing. Alaska is still leading the way with our higher than most activity of influenza cases. And Montana, looks like Wyoming is jumping up a little bit to join us, but Montana and Hawaii are still kind of in the low to minimal. So good job, guys. Next slide, please. And then also for our COVID snapshot, looks like most of our states are kind of in the decrease or moderate decrease. We do have a few orange spots, which is moderate or substantial. So if that's in your counties, you might want to kind of pay attention. And we do have slight increases in our trends, but I wouldn't say anything that is extremely alarming from what we've been looking at. Next slide, please. All right, I want to introduce our first speaker from the state of Wyoming, and we've got Patricia Hall to kick us off with.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please call me Patty, and I am your state long-term care ombudsman for Wyoming. And today, next slide, please. Today, we're going to talk about the ombudsman program and working with nursing facilities. And first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about what an ombudsman is. It's a strange word. It's a Swedish word meaning citizen representative. So it's a public official appointed to investigate citizens' complaints against agencies that may be infringing on the rights of vulnerable adults. And as a long-term care ombudsman, the agencies are boarding homes, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. And it may also include some programs receiving state and federal funds, such as hospice, Meals on Wheels, or home health. And we've even had complaints against our state surveying agency. And the primary duty of an ombudsman is to protect the rights of individuals by investigating and resolving problems and grievances, by providing information and working with facilities and organizations to increase their responsiveness to the people they serve. The ombudsman services are free of charge. We only work with the resident's consent, and everything is confidential. Next slide, please. So the Wyoming Long-Term Care Ombudsman is housed under the Department of Health Director's Office. Usually it is housed under the State Unit on Aging. but our aging division overlooks 3 state-owned facilities, and the ACL felt that that was a conflict of interest. And it's working out very well because the director's office really has no idea what I do, so I get to do what I do. Wyoming has a state ombudsman, that's me, that supervises and provides program support to 3 regional ombudsmen. And the regional ombudsmen are the ones that take the calls and do the facility visits quarterly. We have 3 volunteer ombudsmen, they're all in one county, and we are looking to expand our volunteers throughout the state. Next slide, please. So who does the ombudsman serve? We serve a variety of people. We serve residents or potential residents of long-term care facilities and those in congregate housing. We serve recipients of long-term care services in communities that receive federal and state fundings, such as Meals on Wheels, home health, or hospice. We serve relatives or friends of long-term care residents. We can also serve members of the community, groups, or citizens that are interested in improving long-term care. And then, of course, we serve long-term care facility employees and administrators. Next slide, please. So in Wyoming, the state and regional ombudsman want to work with the staff in the nursing homes, assisted living, and boarding homes to help the residents fulfill their rights and be the best that they can be. Because if the residents are happy, the staff are happy. We can do this by providing presentations to staff and residents about residents' rights in the Ombudsman program. We can work with the facility to find resources for difficult situations. We can brainstorm together and make suggestions that may have not be considered yet. And then with consent of the resident, we can get involved and help with those concerns. Next slide, please. So in 2020, there were over 260,000 consultations to long-term care facilities staff in the United States. A little over 1,100 of those were in the state of Wyoming. And that was smack dab in the middle of COVID, so we don't get quite as many of those right now. But so far this year, we have had over 400 consultation from facilities staff. So we get calls from administrators, social workers, and these calls are about all kinds of different things. Scams, exploitation by family, social media posts, resident-to-resident altercation, passionate family members, and residents that need a different level of care and more. Next slide, please. So what does a facility call? What does a call from a facility look like? So the facility staff member calls a regional ombudsman, for instance, that hasn't paid their bill since they were admitted about 4 months ago. So what we do is we start asking all kinds of questions. Is the resident able to make decisions? What is the family dynamic? Is there a power of attorney or responsible party? Has a Medicaid application been filed? Do they get Social Security? What has been done to collect money owed, etc. Next slide, please. Depending on the answers to those questions, we may make suggestions such as encouraging the facility to contact Social Security and become the rep payee, check into another family member or friend that may be able to help with the Medicaid application, and then calling Adult Protective Services. Sometimes if we have APS and a law enforcement agency knock on that door, it does one of 2 things. It encourages that family member to start paying that bill, or 2, it may draw attention to the fact that, hey, I have no idea where that money's going, and they investigate a little bit more. And sometimes we find that there's $30,000 to $60,000 sitting in an account that nobody knew that the Social Security was going to. So if the amount is large and the resident does not have capacity, then we will suggest that the facility contact our Wyoming Guardianship Corporation and or consider paying for a guardianship. Next slide, please. Sometimes we get calls from facilities wanting us to tell the resident something or asking us to attend the resident. And we are resident directed. So for example, there's a resident that's been talked to several times regarding his smoking in his bathroom in his room. The facility staff is going to have a meeting with him this week and they would like us to be there, but the resident hasn't asked us to attend. So we would make suggestions regarding the situation, such as maybe a behavior contract if it already hasn't been done. And then we will suggest to the staff member to give the resident our information, have them call us and invite us, and then we would be happy to attend. We really want to help nursing homes help their residents, and we will do what we can with providing resources and suggestions, but we are resident directed and we must have permission to get involved any farther than just suggestions. And sometimes our magic wand doesn't work. Next slide, please. So these are some resources. They have some really good information about your ombudsman, and there's the Department of Health for Wyoming, Code of Federal Regulations, and then the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Resource Center. Next slide, please. So next up is Stephanie Wheeler from the state of Alaska.
Thank you, Patty. And I'll be short and brief. I'm just going to say ditto, ditto, and ditto. Would that work? Yeah, I think we all can definitely share that. Patty, you know, we pretty much overlap in the responsibilities that we all do. In Alaska, we have a number of different ombudsman programs, and folks get us mixed up with the state ombudsman program. So we have the state ombudsman program, we have the long-term care ombudsman program, and we have the municipal ombudsman program. In October, during Ombudsman Day, we collaborated to make a short video to describe the differences of our programs. So in short, the state ombudsman program, what their responsibility is to investigate citizen complaints about state agencies. And then the municipal ombudsman program actually investigates complaints against municipal agencies and the school district. So next slide. With that said, the long-term care program, our mission is to provide resident-centered advocacy, as Patty mentioned, to protect the rights, the health, safety, and welfare of residents and skilled nursing facilities, and in long-term and in assisted living homes. So in short, we are the residents advocate. Everything we do relating to individual complaints generally begins with the resident and ends with the resident. We consistently ask ourselves, what would the resident like to see or have us advocate for on their behalf? Next slide. So what is it that we do? Everything that Patty laid out. We make unannounced visits to skilled nursing facilities and assisted living homes. Alaska is huge. We have 20 skilled nursing facilities, and we try to visit those on a quarterly basis. And then we have over 300 assisted living homes for seniors, and we try to visit those assisted living homes on an annual basis. We educate residents and family members and others about residents' rights. We support residents to advocate for themselves. We assist with the development of resident councils and facilities, and provide guidance to residents and facility staff. So we investigate and resolve complaints of seniors and long-term care settings to the resident's satisfaction. We provide information, consultation, and assistance to seniors and others, and to the public. And then we also monitor laws and regulations to help create systems change that improves the lives of seniors in Alaska. Next slide. So as I mentioned, Alaska is it's huge. And John can relate to this, I know, over 75% of our communities are not accessible by road, so we travel a lot. So we visit 27 communities across Alaska. As mentioned before, we have 20 skilled nursing facilities with 1, 2, 3 others in the making, and then over 300 assisted living homes across Alaska. Next slide. Wanted to highlight some of our data from 2022. We're currently working on and finalizing our annual report for 2023. So for 2022, we visited 620 we had 620 assisted living home and skilled nursing facility visits. We have a team of 20 volunteers, dedicated volunteers that donated 205 hours. We received 307 complaints, and 80% of those complaints were resolved to the satisfaction of the resident. And as Patty mentioned, we do consultations with individuals, consultations with facility staff, and we also do a number of community education events. Next slide. So one of our focuses is on residents' rights. October was Residents' Rights Month. We did a couple of educational forums, virtual forums for residents across the state of Alaska. And those resources are actually on our website. So the recordings are on our website. We provide, as I mentioned before, we educate seniors about their rights. And one of the things that we focused on doing this past year was making sure that residents, because our state is so diverse, residents that speak different languages, they have access to residents' rights in their language. We're working with the university to try to do the residents' rights information in 3 of our main Alaska Native languages. But I want to share a story about a woman from Germany. We went to visit with her in an assisted living home, and her primary language is German, and she spoke half English and part German. When I presented her with the residents' rights information in German, she started reading that information in German and just started crying and said, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for seeing who I am." And that was just a touching experience with making sure that residents understand their rights in different languages. A couple other things that we've completed this past year. We did a discharge and eviction training for skilled nursing facilities in January 2023. We're aiming to do that again for January 2024. We are aiming to do a voting rights educational forum in the spring of 2024. On our website, we have a resident council toolkit where we share that information with facility staff and residents who are interested in developing a resident council. We, as I mentioned previously, that we're looking into doing residents' rights information in our 3 of our major Alaska Native languages. Next slide. And so these are the resources that we offer on our website. We do have a Facebook page, so please feel free to follow us on Facebook. And we also have a video on frequently asked questions of the Alaska Long-Term Care Ombudsman that you can find on our website as well. And with that said, I'll pass it over to Carmen.
Had a technical difficulty getting me off of mute, which might not be too bad of a thing. I'm Carmen Shabaka. I'm the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman for Montana. And as the State Ombudsman stated before me, there is really a lot of overlap in what all of the programs do because we are tasked with these things under federal regulation and federal law. Next slide, please. So our program in Montana celebrated its 43rd year anniversary of services in January of 2023. And in addition to federal law, we are also authorized under Montana statutes. I am currently the state long-term care ombudsman in Montana, and I am housed in the Department of Health and Human Services Senior and Long-Term Care Division Aging Services Bureau. We also have other types of ombudsmen in the state, namely the Child and Family Ombudsman, who's handle complaints about foster care and child protection services. We also have a mental health ombudsman. For some reason, our local ombudsman get a lot of calls about CPS cases, so we hand those over to the ombudsman who is more knowledgeable in that area. All of our ombudsmen are housed in outside agencies that we contract with. None of them are state employees. I am the only state employee. So we have 9 provider agencies. 8 of those are area agencies on aging. And we have 1 program who is housed with North Central Independent Living Services. In addition to myself, we have 3 certified regional ombudsmen. We have actually 17 local ombudsmen and 2 ombudsman interns and 1 certified ombudsman volunteer. Our program is limited to serving those individuals, regardless of age and pay or source, living in assisted living facilities, critical access hospitals, swing beds only. Swing beds in critical access hospitals are those that can swing from acute care setting to long-term care setting, and our nursing homes. And those are our current, as of today, total facilities with current total bed capacity. That's obviously not our census, because a lot of our facilities are down in census. We actually have a couple of nursing homes that are actually located on tribal land, namely the Crow Reservation and Blackfeet. Our local ombudsman also serve those facilities on those reservations. Next slide, please. We have an ombudsman assigned to every one of these long-term care facilities, and under our standards, all of our ombudsmen are required to make a routine visit to all of their assigned facilities at a minimum time, 1 time per month. And if you've ever taken a look at Montana, you can see it's a huge frontier state, not unlike Alaska, but we are lucky enough that we are able to reach our facilities by road. But we do have a lot of our ombudsmen who do have a lot of what we call windshield time. So that does take up a huge portion of their time and effort. We have in September of 2023, any of the nursing homes who are on this presentation may know of our old Good Care Is Your Right booklet. That was completely revised and redone. It's very pretty. And that booklet has been printed and is now available. I'm currently working on getting that posted to our website along with our brochures. That has not been done yet, but certainly if any of the long-term care facilities, namely the nursing homes, want to contact your local ombudsman or myself, we can get you a copy of that guide. I've been handing those out to the facilities that I cover, to the administration, if I can, anybody I can find there, the social services director, and obviously the resident council president. The other things that we do is we provide resources to residents and staff. We do provide information on COVID-19 vaccine availability, regardless of the personal opinions of any of our local ombudsmen. All of our certified long-term care ombudsmen are available to provide in-service training to facility staff, but we have to be invited to do that. In the past, we have partnered with our Adult Protection Services Division and Bureau to provide training to a lot of our long-term care facilities. A lot of the nursing homes did take up that invitation. We maintain a current list of all of our ombudsmen with their contact information and areas of coverage, particularly if they only serve a particular county or city. And that website right there is where you can find that. I also maintain a list here in my office, as does the person who handles our 800 number, of all of the long-term care facilities and the specific local ombudsmen who cover that facility, so that if we do have somebody call, they can tell the person who answers, they ask them, what county or city are you living in? What facility are you calling about? And then they will provide the name and phone number of the local ombudsman, and also transfer those individuals over to that local ombudsman. Next slide, please. And with that, I am going to turn it over to John McDermott with the Aloha state of Hawaii.
Hey, mahalo. Aloha, everybody. Next slide. So our state is a very small state, 1.4 million, but we're an island state, and so that does make things kind of complicated. When I started 25 years ago as the state long-term care ombudsman, getting on a plane was a lot easier and a lot cheaper, and the pre-screening was much faster, and everything is much more complicated. In 1998, there was just me, the state long-term care ombudsman, and Oahu ombudsman Iris Matsunobu, staff of 2 to cover the whole state, and no volunteers at that time. So we have grown quite a bit. We were lucky that the legislature did give us funding in 2017 to start a part-time ombudsman for the neighbor islands. And so Brent is our Oahu ombudsman, is our Maui ombudsman. Wayne is on Kauai. Jackie was in Hilo, now Vicky. Kona, we've always had problems finding somebody to work over on the Kona side. But the good news is that in 2022, our legislature gave us funding, and the governor approved this, to hire full-time ombudsmen. So anybody out there looking for a job, we are now in the process of interviewing for a second ombudsman for Oahu. And then all these contractors, they're part-time, they're not interested in working full-time. So those positions are all available. So we have about 13,000 long-term care beds, and trying to visit at least once a quarter is very difficult, but we do now have an active volunteer program. And so we're definitely moving in the right direction. Next slide. Okay, sometimes people confuse the Ombudsman program with Adult Protective Services. Their mission is very specific. They're investigating abuse, elder abuse, financial, psychological, sexual, whatever. But they have their own process for what cases they will take. The Ombudsman program, we will take any case. Somebody has a complaint, we want to go check that out. So we're not as strict as APS. We don't have a memorandum of agreement yet with APS, but I think we need that, so that cases that they've decided don't meet their criteria, they could pass it on to us, and we could still check out to find out, why does this person feel that they are being abused in some way? It may be true, maybe it's not, but they're making the call for some reason. They're scared, and so we want to do what we can. The Office of Healthcare Assurance is our licensing agency. They're part of the Department of Health, and they do their annual inspections. They're supposed to be a surprise, but sometimes it seems like facilities know roughly when they're coming. And then they also do individual complaints, but for the most part, it's really once a year. Our folks, we try to go in for our volunteers. They're assigned to their facilities on a weekly basis, so that they really get to know the residents feel comfortable talking to them. I should have said initially that the Ombudsman program is part of the Executive Office on Aging, and EOA is attached to the Department of Health. So that is a potential conflict of interest when you're in the same agency as the surveyors, but we work that out. And then with Mafuku, same thing. They have their own criteria for cases that they will take or not take. So really, with all 3 of these, we need to work on getting an MOU or an MOA. We're lucky that the Ombudsman program does have the National Ombudsman Resource Center. And so states do share lots of information. They do share their MOUs so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can, borrow and then tweak for your own specific state. Next slide. These are the types of facilities that we have. So everybody knows what a nursing home is. Our community care foster family homes are kind of mini nursing homes, so no more than 3 beds. Only one can be private pay. The other 2 have to be Medicaid. We have adult residential care homes, which I think some of you call board and care. So a type 1 is 5 beds or less, and type 2 is 6 beds or more, and these are private homes. An expanded arch is kind of a hybrid. So I'm in this care home, I had a stroke, nobody's fault. My level of care changed. I'm now skilled or intermediate. In the old days, I would have to move out. But people would say, I don't want to move out. I like it here. She likes me. What happened to aging in place? Why can't I stay here? So our Department of Health said that if the caregiver is willing to take some additional classes to meet your additional needs, then you can stay where you are, and we will call it an expanded arch. So if you're type 1, 5 beds or less, and you become expanded, 2 of those beds can be nursing home level. The other 3 still have to be regular care home. And if you're a type 2, 6 beds or more, and you become expanded, 20% can be nursing home level. The rest have to be regular care home. So why does the caregiver want to do this? She's going to get paid more because she's providing more care. Why does the resident want to do this? Because a nursing home is $15,000, $20,000 a month. This is much cheaper. Why do we, the taxpayer, care? Well, because if they're on Medicaid, we're footing the bill, and a care home is much cheaper, like I said, than a nursing home. So it's a win-win for everybody, so long as you are getting good care. And then assisted living facilities, these in our state right now are all private pay. They're fairly expensive. Some of them have memory care units. Some of them do have a nursing floor. So you pay more as you need a la carte, more services. And then the group homes and independent living, we do not go into those homes, but we do receive complaints, and then we do try to help those folks. And people who stay in their own homes can either have a home health agency or a home care agency come and meet their needs. And we do have some unlicensed homes. They're called aging in place homes. And so we did have some bills passed that these homes will be cited when they're caught, but somebody first has to report them so that we can find these homes. So these homes do not have annual inspections. They do not have access to the ombudsman. You don't know who the staff are. You don't know what training they received. So not a safe option for anybody to consider. Next slide. So this is our bed count by island. And so, you know, if I go to Kauai, it takes an hour and a half before you get on the plane. You have to waste time getting the car. You have to drive to the facility. Maybe at most you're going to see 2 or 3 facilities, and then you got to go back to the airport. It doesn't make any sense. So this is why we've been trying for 25 years to get the legislature to approve a full-time ombudsman for Kauai, for the Hilo side, for the Kona side, for Maui. Maui's actually 3 islands, Maui County. So it's Maui Island, Molokai, and Lanai. And then Oahu, as you can see, is where the bulk of our population is. So 10,171 beds just on Oahu out of a total of 12,942. But the National Institute on Medicine said that you should have 1 full-time ombudsman at a minimum for every 2,000. And we only had me and the Oahu ombudsman. So we were far, far behind. So we're very grateful that the legislature gave us these positions, but it just means that we caught up to a 1995 minimum recommendation. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, we rely heavily on volunteers because of the way we're spread out with all of the different islands. For me to be flying, I appreciate collecting all those miles on Hawaiian Airlines and now Alaska Airlines, but it's just not impossible. I cannot do my job without volunteers. Next slide. This is over the period of COVID, a lot of our websites really were beefed up. We got a lot of money from the CARES Act, Federal CARES Act. I think our program got $100,000. So we did use that so that we could provide gas mileage. We've never paid our volunteers for their gas, so that we could update our literature, create a website, have a webmaster. So this has all been improved. And so this is just some general information. Next slide. COVID was a real test for all of us. So we discovered the hard way that residents who are isolated from their families and not a lot of activities going on and left in their bedrooms staring at an empty wall, privacy curtain on the left, privacy curtain on the right. They rapidly deteriorated. Dementia definitely increased. People did die. It was a really terrible situation. We're still fighting to get more staffing, all of our facilities. It's not that they don't want to hire, it's that who can you hire? So we're trying to be creative in terms of getting more people interested in healthcare as a profession. We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We cannot borrow from states next door to us. There is no next door to us. Personal belongings, a lot of people lost their belongings because folks had to be moved from room to room to room. And usually at the time of admission, it's the family who creates the inventory sheet, make sure everybody's belongings are marked, identified. But that didn't happen during COVID because families were not allowed to come in at the time of admission. So sometimes these inventory sheets were not done and things were lost. So that was a problem. The whole informed consent issue, somebody has Alzheimer's, how can they give informed consent? Family member is not legally the power of attorney. So we had to kind of do the best that we could. So I know because of time, I can't go into all of this, but COVID was definitely something we don't want to have to live through, but we certainly learned a lot from this experience. So these are just highlights of some of the issues that we had to deal with. Next slide. Okay, so Lahaina, everybody's aware of the fires in Lahaina and Kula as well. And luckily there were no long-term care facilities in Lahaina, but we felt the need to fly to Maui to be available because staff were also kind of dealing with their own post-traumatic stress. And so we went to all of the facilities, checking on the residents, checking on the staff, what can we do? Some residents who were getting therapy, they have no home to go back to after their therapy. And they cannot stay in a nursing home because they don't really qualify. And would the federal government be willing to continue paying for them to stay in a nursing home because the shelters were filling up with all of these homeless people? So lots of different issues, but they did appreciate that we were there to let people talk because staff are so busy. They do not have the time to be sitting next to somebody for half an hour or an hour, however long it takes, because I lost my home, I lost my pets, I lost all of my belongings. Young people, you can rebuild. Old people in their 80s, oh my gosh, family albums, family keepsakes, just unbelievable. And we're still experiencing the trauma. So this is going to take a long time to resolve, but we felt the need to be there. Next slide. Molokai. So little Molokai, unfortunately, is down to its very last community care family foster home. Arsinia is our last caregiver on that island. This is really tragic. Molokai, you see me on a little 9-seater airplane. That's all we've got to get to Molokai. And so that means that if you're in a wheelchair, you don't get on one of these planes. The pilots are not going to help you get into the plane. Your family has to be willing to do that. When I started 25 years ago, Molokai General Hospital had 24 beds for nursing home. And over time, they did not replace those people until they were down to the last 2 who were comatose, and then they passed. And so they had 5 care homes. Now they're down to 1. We really need to encourage more people to get into that kind of an industry. There used to be a ferry that would go from Molokai to Maui. That ferry went out of business. So this island is really, really isolated, and the community has done the best that they can. But when you start needing professional help, then you also need professional caregivers. And so this is something that we really have to work on for poor Molokai. Next slide. And this just shows how we spent our money. So we updated a lot of our posters and we've got a toll-free number. And so next slide. This is, just what these things look like. And we have to do it specific to island because they all have different addresses, different phone numbers, different websites. So we've updated that. And we do that on an annual basis. Next slide. Again, just more literature. We're always recruiting for volunteers. We do have a full-time volunteer coordinator, Lindy Itani. And our volunteers do make a one-year commitment. They do weekly visits. We have a monthly Zoom meetings with everybody. So everybody is on the same page. Everybody hears the same guest speaker. Nobody's going rogue and starting to do their own thing. We want to make sure that we have a good relationship with our facilities. We do not want an adversarial relationship. We want to be seen as a partner and as a resource. Next slide. We do a lot of community education. So these shirts are relatively new. Now people know us as the folks with the orange shirts. So senior fairs, health fairs, family councils, you call us, we'll be there. It doesn't matter. We definitely want to be available. And this is also a way of recruiting more volunteers. Next slide. Okay, and so this is our current staff. So Lynn is my volunteer coordinator. Jan is our Oahu ombudsman. Jamel recently left to join the police force. So we pray that he doesn't get shot. We told him that, you know, when you're mad at the ombudsman, you don't shoot at him. You sure you want to do this? But the pay is quite a bit higher. So thank you for letting me speak. Aloha.
Thank you, John. We actually had a question in the chat while you were doing your presentation. It says, does Hawaii also have resident rights in service that they will come do at a facility?
Yes, we often get invited. Of course, during COVID, that didn't happen, but during Residents' Rights Month, a lot of facilities do ask us to come and give a presentation. So we're happy to do that. And actually, we've also kind of invented a little game so that it's more participatory. Residents' rights, we sometimes do that also with staff as well, because everybody needs to be aware of what the residents' rights are.
Thank you, John. So we ran over a little, but that's okay. We thank you guys all for staying on with us. Do we have any questions for any of the presenters? And you guys will get this slide deck with next week's email reminder. So you will have contact information for all of our presenters today, or you can also reach out to us here at Mountain Pacific and we can put you in contact with the Ombudsman if you would like. Can we go to the next slide, Mary? If you guys could go ahead and fill out the evaluation link in the chat, we would really appreciate it. We do take what you say to heart, and we will share any questions or thoughts you have with the Ombudsman that presented today as well. It is anonymous, so you do not have to put your name in there, but if you do want contact, make sure you add your name and email to any comment that you make so we can pass that on. And then next week, we will be going over holiday happiness or lack thereof. And then also we will have a video by our Project First Line presented by Crystal. So I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the escape room that Project First Line has created, but that Crystal was the brains behind that. So we hope you join us next week on December 13th. Thank you for sticking with us this extra 15 minutes. We really appreciate it. And you guys all have a good week.